Hello, welcome to tonight's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Taiwan Jabela, your host for tonight. Let's quickly look at today's front page of Namibian Sun. In this segment, I'm excited to be joined on the couch by the president of the Popular Democratic Movement, McHenry Venaani, to talk to us about a host of things. Sir, very good evening and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, listeners and viewers.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you tweeted today first. The president, you had a telephone or telecom conversation with him. What was the nature of the call?
Well, of course, when you deal with the president, you always use Chatterton rules, which means that you don't divulge what was discussed. But I think the thrust of the motive was that I alerted State House that I wanted to speak to the president vis-a-vis the issue of the COVID-19, the epidemic, and we had a very illustrious discussion on the COVID-19 and how we could mitigate remedies to really lessen its spread. We have agreed on a number of issues, the issues of lockdown, the issues of sanitation, proroguing parliament, and a number of host of issues. But of course, I'll leave the benefit of the doubt to the president for him to take measures. I think later on he promised that he wants to invite leaders of all political parties to be briefed on the situation. So I'll give the benefit of the doubt. I do not want to reveal what he said about it, but those are the fundamental issues that I had a problem with as leaders, that we need to put the public welfare ahead of our political differences and ahead of our personal differences. Of course, this is a first call or a first engagement with President Geingob since he assumed presidency, since the last 5 years. So that's the first call that we really discuss something. Not that we don't say hello to each other, we always do, but we have never discussed anything.
I was actually going to ask you that because I was editing a story that it appeared in today's edition of the Namibian Sun, where you were quoted saying that there was never really consultations or that kind of engagement, and that I was going to ask you whether this was the first kind.
Well, even in the telephone conversation, I said I was pleased that you are answering my calls. And then he said, of course, he wants to start a new beginning. But that's on a lighter note. But of course, it is a step in the right direction that leaders of a country should find one another. I'm the opposition leader, whether he likes it or not. He is the president, whether I like it or not. So our personalities and our behaviors as human beings cannot surpass the public welfare. We are there to prepare to represent the public welfare, and the public welfare is important.
Indeed. What is PDM's general standing on this coronavirus? What is it that must be done? What is it that we should do?
Well, we started very late with the lockdown. We could have prevented the whole coronavirus entering Namibia, because 2 weeks ago I've asked the Minister of Health, why don't we do a lockdown on all our airports and ports of entry? We could have controlled it. But this is not a time for a blame game. It's a time for us to put the country together and to rally behind one another to push forward. Our agenda is very simple with coronavirus, that we need to send water to where it is needed, sanitation. We need society to be mobilized for people to drop water at various places. You, Taiwan Jabela, give 5 jerrycans a day or 2, and you just drop them somewhere where they are taken to the shanty towns. We want people to have access to foodstuff, those that are in need, because if you do a lockdown of a country and people do not have foodstuff, they will start rioting, they will start breaking shops. So we need to prepare. Our preparedness is very important, and we need to rally the country, the churches, the youth groups, the Farmers Association, the NGOs. All of us must be in the service of humanity to really combat this disastrous calamity that is facing humanity.
Let me pick your brain on this situation. So on Saturday we had this KLM flight that landed in Windhoek, and people were taken to some lodge outside Windhoek as a precaution. But we are still hearing that our borders with South Africa, where a lot of cases are being reported, people are still walking in here for...
We need a national lockdown. That was part of the discussion. I said to the president that we need a number of lockdown. In the discussion, we agreed on a number of issues. It was a meeting, a telecom meeting that we agreed on all the issues that I was raising generally. And I think we need to lock down all our borders to make sure that we don't perpetuate the spread of the disease.
Definitely. Now, you are the leader of the official opposition, and you, on Saturday, you were at State House.
Yes.
There were a lot of people there. What kind of message were you guys sending?
We sent a very wrong message. I must credit State House that they really took precautionary measures. There were always people that were testing your fevers as you entered and so forth. But I was surprised by the amount of people that attended the event. Generally, we thought it was an event that will have less than 120 people. But when we came there were probably over 400 people. So I think we took a risk. The army was too huge company. We could have reduced soldiers up to 40 or lesser, but the numbers were too high, and they created a risk for the country. Because the leaders should toe the line of the WHO directives. We can't do something different from what the WHO is. Currently, Parliament is sitting, and we are saying Parliament should be prorogued. It must be cancelled because of the coronavirus. We must send a clear message that a conglomeration of over 108 people are not going to give any safety. We are going to spread the disease. And if coronavirus hits Parliament, it hits the nerve center of leadership of the country, and it could have serious ramifications to the planning, to the implementation of the economy and the running of the society in general.
I mean, I was going to ask you about Parliament, because you are scheduled to go to Parliament after this interview. Because at Namibia Media Holdings today, as management, we decided that we are not going to send our reporters to any event that has more than 50 people. Press conference, Parliament, anything that is more than that, we're not going to risk our reporters. And that is just not for their own safety, but also
for the country's safety.
And in fact, the directive, to comply with that directive also. Okay, so moving away from coronavirus, Honorable Venaani, let's talk about what is your reaction. What is your immediate reaction to the cabinet, the newly structured cabinet? Let's not go into the personnel yet, but just the structure itself. What is your impression of it?
Well, the president attempted. It's an attempt. He has not succeeded in the attempt to downsize government. But the mere fact that this country has, to me, that's a fundamental difference that I have with him or his party. This country cannot afford to have a prime minister and a vice president at one go. Look at South Africa with 43 million people. They have a vice president. So we have to elect. What is it that we need? If it is a prime minister that our fathers of constitutional writers wrote in our constitution, why do we need a vice president? And there is no justification. So I thought the president would walk the talk in minimizing the top four. Because our top, the South African minister, I was sitting right behind her, when the people were sworn in, prime minister, deputy, she was shaking her head because it was just too large of a senior cabinet. So on that score, he didn't do well. On the cabinet downsizing, he attempted. He did a few things right: the agriculture, land reform, the home affairs. There we credit him. But he could have done the same with education and create a very robust higher education department within the Ministry of Education, as opposed to have two ministries. Namibia can get along with 15 ministries. The number of deputy ministers, I think there are too many. The country does not need those 15 deputy ministers. He could have gotten away with 4 deputy ministers in critical areas to really reduce the cost of government. Now, with the downsizing of cabinet, does it also downsize the civil service? Because your downsizing of cabinet should cascade down to really making sure that you realign the civil service. Or are we going to see a situation where the executive director of the land reform would still be an executive director there and still have 2 executive directors for 1 ministry? So those are the things that are very important. So the proof is in the pudding. Going further to how he has structured his cabinet, I think Shimi is a good pick for the finance, a very erudite economist, respected, a very down-to-earth fellow, a person I know for many years, a personal friend of mine. line and so forth. But what one wonders is that, will Shimi, and that's a very fundamental question that one has to ask, will he stand the pressure of being bullied, or will he be bullied? So it doesn't matter whether you are good or you are erudite, you are very thorough with your work, will you be bullied or not? And at finance you need a strong hand that doesn't need to be bullied. So I think that he has to walk that talk and convince this country that he's a man of principle. He won't be bullied into taking wrong decisions and so forth, because generally last terms are times for people to take decisions and they don't care because it's anyway the last term. So we would want a strong hand there. But Shimi is a great pick. We also take note that there is a young woman, Dr. Muinyangwe, being deputy minister. I would have thought, I want to congratulate her, but I would have thought that the president, in walking the talk of working together, she should have made her a minister, because a deputy minister does not have much of an influence in this country. We know that deputy ministers are just laptop people, but nevertheless it's a good gesture that he brought somebody who is very equipped with the necessary tools to be able to do that. But of course she brings a lot of bane to the opposition bloc that SWAPO wants to regain two-thirds majority at all cost, and whether she would vote with the opposition would be a very difficult thing to tell at this point in time. But generally she's walking a very tight rope. I wish her success, but it's not going to be easy to her party, but I wish her success nevertheless. The young lady, of course, Geingob is inspired by Venaani's politics, and I appreciate that we have brought a young woman of 23 to parliament. Had it not been for PDM and LPM that brought young people to parliament, this wouldn't have been done. So we are leading, and PDM is leading on this front, and Hage Geingob is making moves to counter Venaani's moves, and that's good. We are at the politics where ideas matters now. That if this guy moves like this, we move like this. Not that arrogant. Even if you are saying the right thing, people will not be able to react. I'm realizing that Geingob is reacting to what Venaani is doing, and that's good. That's good for the country. The country is moving in one direction. So the youth has really benefited. Now we have young women, people that have beaten my record. I came there as 25, 24, going to 25. Now they are 23 and 24-year-olds. So I always wanted to leave parliament making sure that younger people than myself would have done that, and I think I've done very well in bringing young people to the fore. And in PDM, it's not only the 24-year-old. We have a 30-year-old, we have a 32-year-old, we have a 35-year-old, we have a 34-year-old. So we have brought a team of young people, expert lawyers, political scientists, nurses, to come at the power table. So, and the youth shouldn't really let us down. They are now at the power table. The youth agenda should be accelerated in the corridors of power.
Indeed. The last question, and it's related now to what you are saying about your party representation in parliament. I know there's a case that is sub judice in many ways, but it would be unfair if I don't ask you why you changed MPs, removing those that have been gazetted and so forth.
See, there are 3 gazetted lists. The initial rule was that parties nominate people at electoral colleges. We submitted an electoral college list. That list went to the ECN. ECN was bullying political parties on making sure to comply with the law that if you are in the public service, you must not stand as a candidate. We are going to court on the basis of going to make that constitutional provision unconstitutional, and we are going to succeed because it is an unconstitutional provision. But what we are guarding against is the following. We don't want tribalism to be able to run the party. The people that were elevated because of the removal of those that were in positions were elevated not because of any structures that elevated them, but they were elevated because of an absence. So the elevation was done by ECN and not us. And what we are trying to avoid is it's a case in point of saying we would have an overrepresentation of 7 ethnic Herreros in the party. We would have an overrepresentation of 6 bastard people in the party. And the party doesn't represent ethnocracy. It represents a broad-based representation of the people of Namibia. So people from Kavango must be at the table of the power. People from the Zambezi must be at the table of power. People from Kunene. So we have not adjusted a new list. The very initial list that we submitted is the one that we are following. And people were saying also, no, Venaani is bringing his father to parliament. In fact, my father is one of those people that were elevated unduly. And just because he's my father, I would not let him come to Parliament. Yeah. I would stick to the rules because I'm a party representative that represents the ethos of the Electoral College. So the list that we have is a list that we started with when we announced our national list. People are saying, no, I should have been a member of Parliament. But this communication was done. That the gazetted list was done by ECN because of a provision. And we didn't make this case after elections. We made the case before elections. We were fighting ECN all along before we knew the results, that saying that this list is going to create a problem for us. Because it creates a problem of age. We will bring more older people to Parliament as opposed to my father, older people. We would bring more Hereros to Parliament. And I would not lead a party that represents one ethnic group. It's unfortunate. It's just not me.
Indeed. McHenry, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was the leader of the official opposition, McHenry Venaani, speaking to us about coronavirus, about the recently announced cabinet, as well as squabbles in his party. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Very good night.